The risk factors, the stigma, the cultural barriers, the language barriers, these risk factors are really common among AAPI survivors of human trafficking, and that's a part of the reason why it's so difficult to get this data and identify the survivors. But it's critical that we get this data anyways, because otherwise they're rendered invisible. So as you know, human trafficking involves the use of force, fraud, or coercion to obtain an act of labor or sex. And it's a really prevalent issue, but unfortunately, due to the nature of the crime, that it's often hidden, we don't have much data about it. And even with the limited research that we do have, the data is far from comprehensive. So the data doesn't always represent diverse populations, and the data is often undercounting folks as a result.
One of my clients that I've been working with over the past year, and I feel like her story really highlights for the API population how they're often left out of research when it comes to human trafficking and often overlooked, like you mentioned, right? And specifically, right, when it comes to the API population, it's these language barriers and cultural factors that are additional risk factors for trafficking, but also present more barriers to even identifying as survivors and being counted in research. And so she is actually a North Korean defector and human trafficking survivor, and her trafficker preyed on these language barriers and cultural factors. So language barriers in that this client, doesn't speak any English, and therefore also doesn't understand any immigration or labor laws in the United States or in California. And also the cultural stigma and shame associated with being a sex worker or criminal.
Most people conflate human trafficking with sex trafficking. And while sex trafficking is prevalent, it's important to understand that labor trafficking is very prevalent as well, and unfortunately is often overlooked, like in the Thai garment factory workers case that you mentioned, where 72 Thai workers were brought over to California, and they were brought into a sweatshop working long hours and working in inhumane conditions.
And that is why we are asking that the state allocate $3.25 million to fund a prevalence study on both labor and sex trafficking in both Los Angeles and Alameda counties, with a particular emphasis on engaging with organizations and survivors from diverse communities in order to ensure that the data that is collected is representative of diverse communities in order to inform effective anti-trafficking policies and practices.
To learn more about TRACE and our other legislative priorities, visit our website.